Tim, can you tell us how you happened to become a climate activist? What happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had been an environmentalist and somewhat of an activist for a lot of my life. The turning point was really in 2008, which was a little after I had been growing increasingly concerned about climate change and witnessing that the climate movement didn't really look anything like any of the social movements in our history that have been successful, especially at that time in 2008, because it was incredibly focused on appeasing those at the top of our current power structure and pushing for a cleaner, greener version of the world that we have now, and trying to show that we can just switch out our energy sources and keep everything else about our oppressive and unjust society the same, for this messaging that they thought would appeal to the top of our power structure. And I saw that from studying social movement history that we needed more confrontation in the movement, that we needed to actually be challenging those at the top of that power structure in a way that they would feel pressured to change. And I saw the role of things like civil disobedience in social movement history. So I was looking by the end of 2008 for an opportunity to take that kind of civil disobedience. And at the end of 2008, I was living in Utah, and the Bush administration had their last big giveaway to the fossil fuel industry, which was a Bureau of Land Management oil and gas auction in which they were auctioning off lands outside of Canyonlands and Arches National Parks to the oil and gas industry. And there was some attention on this auction. People realized that it was kind of outside the norm, that it was pretty outrageous for the lands that they were trying to auction off. So there was some protest against it, and I decided that I wanted to do more than just hold a sign outside. So I showed up, which happened to be right after I'd finished my last final exam in economics for that semester. And so I went straight from the final exam down to the auction. And I showed up there and said to some folks, let's try to go inside and see what we can do. And they said, no, they'll just drag you out at the door. And I said, well, okay, then let's go get dragged out at the door. And I went up to the door and they said, I hire you here for the auction. I said, well, yes, I am. And so they directed me to a table where an official said, are you here to be a bidder? And I said, well, yes, I am. And so I got signed up to be a bidder, and they gave me an auction card. And I was still thinking as I was signing up, I can get inside and make a speech, make some kind of disruption. It was right after that guy threw a shoe at Bush, so I kind of had that in the back of my mind. And then I got inside the auction room, and I realized, wow, I can actually have a major impact here by bidding. And so it took me about 20 minutes or so to decide that that's what I wanted to do. And so finally I started bidding, first to drive up the prices. So a lot of these parcels were going for $2, $5, $10 an acre. And so I would wait till it was getting down to one bidder, and it was going once, going twice, and then I'd jump in, drive up the cost. And that was being effective. Some of these, they were going once, going twice at like $12 an acre. I would jump in and I'd try to watch the other guy kind of play poker and see when he's getting close to his maximum price, and I'd get out before I won anything. So some of these I'd jump in at 12 and get out at $240 an acre. And that's for a parcel of like 2,000 acres that I just drove from $12 to $240 an acre. And so afterwards I'd be like, wow, I just cost that oil company like $450,000 in 5 minutes. Like, this is the most effective thing I've ever done in my life. and yet I was also thinking, but it's still worth it to the oil company, right? So that's land that's still going to get drilled. That's oil that's still going to end up in our atmosphere and continue exacerbating the climate crisis. I need to do more. And so it got to the halfway point in the auction where half of the parcels had been auctioned off. And I said, well, I've got to win the rest of them. And so at that point I started winning parcels. And I won every parcel then, 14 in a row until they stopped the auction. And then they stopped the auction and they said, we're going to take a little break, use the restroom, whatever you need to do. And as soon as the auctioneer said that, there was a guy standing next to me with a badge, and he said, can we go talk in the other room? He took me into the other room, and he had a printout of all the parcels that I'd won. He said, so, you know, you don't exactly seem like our normal bidder. And we see here you've won about $1.8 million worth of parcels, and we're just wondering what your intentions are and how you plan on paying for that. I said, well, my intention is to stand in the way of this auction in any way that I can, because it's a fraud against the American people and a threat to my future. And the agent said, so you don't plan on paying for these? I said, no, and I don't have the means to either. And so then they took me into custody and questioned me for a long time. And they ended up releasing me that day.
Yeah.
And saying that charges would later be pressed. And so then I was released and the media was there waiting. I told the story to the media. It became a very big deal.